Get ready for Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes, the 30-minute show packed with an hour's worth of information, bringing you familiar guests on important issues such as immigration, education, the Middle East, culture, religion, and the changing worldviews of Americans and the world. You've seen her on Fox News, you've read her on the World Wide Web. Now here's Sharon.
For such a time as this.
Freeing the minds of the brainwashed masses.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Changing Worldviews today. The National Park Service is sending so many officials out to shut down federal parks from visiting Americans that at this rate it might have to suspend furloughs if the government closure continues. Case in point, the World War II Memorial on the Mall in Washington, where veterans have been staging protests to keep it open. Parliamentarians in Iran have passed a bill to protect the rights of children, which includes a clause that allows a man to marry a young girl as young as 13. CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, is demanding that Maryland schools close for Islamic holidays. Chemical weapons inspectors are headed for Syria, and Iran's President Rouhani said no to Obama. It may have been a flat-out rejection, but Iranian President Hassan Rouhani certainly surprised a lot of people by declining to meet with President Obama yesterday. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared to world leaders in his UN speech today, quote, "In our time, the biblical prophecies are being realized." And that's what we're going to be talking about on today's show.
You're listening to Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes, commentary on the news that's void of spin, but never short on passion. Now, here's more with Sharon.
Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with President Obama on Monday before his speech today at the United Nations. And in that speech, he said, "In our time, the biblical prophecies are being realized." When speaking before the world's leaders at the General Assembly of the United Nations, he says, as the prophet Amos said, "They shall rebuild ruined cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink their wine. They shall till gardens and eat their fruit, and I will plant them upon their soil, never to be uprooted again." He said, ladies and gentlemen, the people of Israel have come home, never to be uprooted again. Meanwhile, when President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu met on Monday, the president urged Netanyahu to speed up peace talks with the Palestinians. He said that for negotiations to yield results, core issues must be seriously discussed, of which the Palestinians claim Israel has not even agreed to talks based on 1967 borders with land swaps. We have talked about this over and over again, what it would mean for Israel to go back to the 1967 borders, and yet that is part of the plan that President Obama, is urging Israel to take. I want to play for you part of an interview of Walid Shobat, former PLO terrorist and author who we've had on the show several times. This is a clip of his interview from Michael Savage's radio program, where he claims a lot of the reasons that there is so much dysfunction in terms of the United States dealing in a comprehensive way is because of President Obama's brother's ties to the Muslim Brotherhood.
This is the former chancellor of the Constitutional Court of Egypt, and she's also the current advisor to the Constitutional Court of Egypt. She's not a small cookie. Her name is Tahani al-Jabali. She stated that the reason the United States cannot fight the international organization of the Muslim Brotherhood is because the brother of U.S. President Barack Obama is the architect of the investments for the International Organization for the Muslim Brotherhood. Which brings us back to the issue we discussed on your show before, Malik Obama. She's possibly talking about Malik Obama. She didn't give the name, but she said this is a nugget for the American people, what they do not know. She wants to open the books in the courts. She is, addressing the issues that Americans do not understand. She says the American government will not stop us. We need to open the files and begin court sessions. The Obama administration cannot stop us. They're holding ground. In fact, it's not just in a speech she gave. It's in several interviews.
Oh, wait, she wants to open the files in Egypt to show how this government collaborated with the terrorists? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. She's saying that the government collaborated with the terrorists. You look at Benghazi, things that you've never heard in this country. It's all over, circulates the Middle East. In the Benghazi case, even there is a docket number 3790 against Morsi for involvement with terrorism in Libya and Egypt. In fact, even the Libyan government states that Mohammed Morsi was involved in Benghazi. When you look at what the Americans are charging regarding Benghazi, there's only one Libyan, Khattala, a small fry. They're not addressing any of the Egyptian operatives. It was the case in Nasr City terror cell that was busted in Egypt, in which a Libyan was killed. His name, by Reuters, was linked to the case in Benghazi.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, some of the things that we have said regarding this whole issue. Be right back.
Hey, this is Brian Sussman. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. That's what you'll get with Sharon Hughes.
Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes. Broadcast journalism you can trust.
What's going on in the media, what's happening in our nation regarding the truth of Israel is so upsetting. It's so wrong that to have your voice here coming right out of the San Francisco Bay Area is an incredible blessing for everyone that tunes in. You know, I travel around the world. When I go back and forth, especially to Israel, people are stunned when I say that my friend Sharon has a conservative, wise, anointed, brilliant show coming right out of San Francisco to the whole world, and they are shocked and very pleased to hear about your work.
Well, thank you.
Changing Worldviews is funded entirely through the tax-deductible donations of our supporters. If you've not done so already, renew your active support today. And if you're new to Changing Worldviews, would you consider helping us with a donation, becoming a monthly partner to help get the truth out and tell the world the side of the story that mainstream media doesn't report? There are those on the front lines and those on the back lines, but it takes the whole army to win the war. Sign up today and receive our best show of the month on CD, Sharon Sang It Like It Is newsletter, and more. Thank you so much ahead of time for supporting our efforts.
My guest today is Jan Markell. She's written 8 books and produced a dozen DVDs. She also writes for many periodicals, and she has had her own radio show for 9 years that's heard around the world. Well, welcome to Changing Worldviews, Jan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Sharon, it's a real honor to be with you. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just get into the subject. Why is the approach that Barack Obama is taking to the Muslim world entirely wrong, in your opinion?
Well, to be honest, it's really a huge mistake that's being made, and Rosenberg and many others have been talking about it for months now. Because, just for example, note that Obama lists only the ways in which the West has mistreated the Islamic world. There's not a word about jihad doctrine. There's not a word about Islamic suppressism. And the imperative to make war against and subjugate non-Muslims. Not a word about the culture of hate and contempt for all non-Muslims. About Arab TV, which portrays Jews and Christians as monkeys and pigs, and which puts on dramas about terrorists blowing up Israelis in pizza parlors in Israel. And most of all, the fact that all the terrorist organizations, their charters, from Hamas to Fatah to Hezbollah to all of the Iranians who back these groups, have a stated clause that Israel is to be wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Now, that is why what's going on, and it's not just under this administration, the biggest illusion that's going on is that world peace will happen if only there is a two-state solution. The problem, and the reason why this is a delusion, is because one side doesn't want a two-state solution. The Arab-Muslim world wants a one-state solution.
Yeah, and I want to get into that in more detail. Back to just overall and how his approach is to the Muslim world. We know he bowed to the Saudi king, first time the U.S. president ever did that. Goes to Turkey and says America is not a Christian nation. And just this whole approach, this whole image that he's trying to create in the Muslim world, brings question marks in the minds of a lot of people. And I think he seems to be continuing to view Iran as though our 30-year tensions with them are our fault.
Exactly. And that is what he believes. He's the great apologist. He's trying to apologize for America to the Muslim world. And I believe, Sharon, he really believes that if he can walk softly and say the right words and sing Kumbaya to these people, that he has enough charm that he can sway the entire Islamic world. This is only a narcissist who would believe such a thing, and a detachment from reality, because, again, the culture of Islam, and certainly not every Muslim, I mean, I got to say that up front, it's not every Muslim, but the culture of radical Islam, you see, they don't even appreciate this approach. They consider this weakness. They appreciate strength. They appreciate force. And the fact that he's basically going along singing Give Peace a Chance, and boy, I tell you, John Lennon would be happy today if he were alive. This has the Islamic world both laughing and scoffing at us. It's not working.
But, you know, around the world we have people thinking that he's God.
Well, this is shocking. I mean, I hadn't planned on addressing it, but, you know, it's such an important issue that has come up. Newsweek perception actually calling him a god. And my reaction to that, and I don't want to stray too far from our topic, but my reaction to that is, what does God think about the world calling a human being God? My concern in that it is heavily the U.S. media doing this is judgment on America. And America, as we speak, is reeling already the root of the economic issues. And to start to deify a human being and literally call him a god, I'm afraid we just could have crossed over a line that we could pay for forever.
Never, ever have we had this take place with any president of the United States. Now, it's not uncommon in the Eastern world. I mean, pharaohs, Caesars were considered gods and so forth. So it's coming out of that mentality. But to have Evan Thomas of Newsweek say it's just shocking. Well, I think it plays into the image that he carries around the world, and this soft-spoken, but like Joel Rosenberg says, he doesn't carry a big stick, you know.
We are talking about the center of the world. That is the epicenter of the world over there, and everything that happens in that part of the world is so important. Everything that happens will affect every one of your listeners eventually, and people don't understand the culture over there, and they also don't understand fully the religion of Islam. There is a segment within Islam, and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is one of the primary pushers of all of this, to bring back the Muslim Messiah known as the Mahdi. Now, this is what Barack Obama chooses to ignore, or else he just doesn't get it, because he's not factoring in this longing to bring back the Mahdi.
Well, one of the things that he said, which of course is very telling, and Obama spoke of a total end to Israel's settlement activity in the West Bank and the need to cease its, he said, stranglehold on the occupied territories. The other thing that I think is very important as we talk about Israel, and we've pointed out on the show before, but it needs to be said again and again, Barack Obama says that with his administration, the United States is no longer going to dictate to other nations as has been done in the past, and yet he himself, as well as Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, has very strongly dictated to Israel that you've got to stop these things. And so, hello, every nation we won't dictate to except one, Israel.
President Obama is thinking of imposing sanctions on Israel, all kind of economic sanctions, if she will not stop building settlements and doing some other things, including we're going to have the city of Jerusalem up for grabs as well. Now, it's already anticipated that Congress is pretty bipartisan in wanting to stand by Israel. And if Obama cannot get the support of Congress, then he will go to the United Nations and try to get them to issue sanctions. My only comment here, number one, look out America, but really number two is, why don't we try sanctions against the real enemies of America? How about Yemen, who blew up the USS Cole a few years ago? How about Syria? How about, we've got North Korea and Iran, and I'm not so sure that the sanctions, if there are any, are very effective. But we're talking about sanctions on the only friend we have in this insane part of the world.
Let's say here, and I know you feel this way too, that the Palestinian people have suffered and they deserve dignity and so forth, but they are suffering not because of America and not because of Israel. They're suffering because their fellow Arab brothers are not supporting them. We've talked many times about all they want is more land from Israel. Giving up more land never works, hasn't worked, because the goal is to wipe Israel off the map.
That's right. I'm not sure where all of this is actually going to ultimately end, but I do think that the administration is on a pathway to destruction, and because they're touching the apple of God's eye, they're touching his land. It says in Leviticus 25, God says, the land is mine. There's a verse in Joel 3 that says, anybody who carves up my land will come under judgment. The primary nation in this whole world that's participating and leading and instigating and organizing the carving up